Our telephone number, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, 464-8295. Hi, Harry. Do you have a question or comment?
Well, first of all, it's the first time ever that I got to speak to both you gentlemen. You're both kind of my heroes in one respect. So thanks for all the work you do. And, Bob, I'm a newsletter subscriber, and I've bought books from you, Dr. Stan. So thanks for everything you folks do, okay?
Appreciate your help and support.
But I had a weird question, and I know, Bob, you have so many things going on in your head, but I was looking at your 2 newsletters ago where you were talking about how you heard that the House repealed or rejected a bill that would have repealed the expansion of Form 1099 tax reporting.
Right, and there's 2 more bills one in the Senate and one in the House.
And then you hit the absolute person that if I could give everything I had, I would get him out, and that's my representative. You're saying that was Senator Levin that was right in the midst of this, really the Democrats here doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable.
And I think the reason they did it is that they knew it would be defeated before the election, and because nobody would want to vote for something before the election. They want to stay neutral for the next 2 or 3 months. And so I think it was a false flag event, so to speak, to try to make it after the election, early next year, more difficult to pass it. But I think that what they did was stupid because, next year is a long ways away. And a good many of these people, at least 60 or 70 congressmen minimum, are going to get kicked out, no matter what party they're in. And in the Senate, the percentages will probably be equal.
Okay, anything else, Harry?
Well, real quickly, if you had to guess, and that's all you're doing, educated guesses, what would you say, really, that this will stay past the Senate and actually become law? This portion of this expansion of 1099 tax form.
Oh, I think it stands a chance of passage. The question is, what are we going to get for people in office? And that's got a lot to do with it.
All right.
Okay, fine. Thanks very much. And Chris, this is these crazy tax forms that you're going to have to fill out for everybody. When you sell more than $600, and it's simply a lot of business is going to go out of business. They just can't possibly fill in all these tax forms. The people are going to have to fill them in. Professional people are going to have to fill them in. Everybody's going to have to fill in these forms, and what's going to happen to them? They're going to be buried back in Washington, D.C., and you're going to see the Capitol building, just the very top of it there, and all the rest is going to be these forms being sent back. But let's go to Frank, who's calling from Salinas. Hi, Frank. How are you doing?
Good. My question is, you keep hearing how bad things are in Mexico, but I was listening to an economist talking about since the March low of 2009, the Mexican stock market has recovered like 25% more than the U.S. stock market, and the Mexican peso has gone up like 40% against the American dollar in the last 2 years now. Why is that, and is this going to continue?
Well, I think it will continue, and one of the reasons is that, first of all, government has raised taxes to offset the loss of revenue from less oil production. You get about $40 billion a year from oil, about $40 billion a year from narcotics, about $22 billion a year from repatriated funds from people who are formerly Mexican that live in the United States and other places. And there's about 17 to 19 billion in people going on vacation, travel. The big question is the manufacturing jobs, and the wages are still low enough in Mexico, but those people make $600, maybe $700 a month, for a line worker. and so it's still profitable to continue to do that. And one of the things about NAFTA was it not only destroyed the agricultural industry to a great extent in Mexico because of the subsidized corporate farms in America that make up 70% of the production in America, but also all of the benefits of NAFTA went to the very rich Carlos Slim, who's an illuminist, and people like him. And they're the ones that are making all the money, and they're paying the people in the factory slave labor. So I don't see them pulling those businesses out of there unless the U.S. were to implement tariffs on goods and services. But without that, the Mexican economy could suffer, but it's not going to suffer anywhere near the way the U.S. economy would. And they got rid of their excess population. They dumped 30 million people in the United States.
And because I think what people have to understand is that under NAFTA, why suddenly that we could export our corn to Mexico, but our corn is subsidized, so we can grow it a lot cheaper. And what we did is we simply impoverished millions of Mexican farmers who were growing. That's all they did. They grew corn, and suddenly they can't sell their corn, and we forced them into a situation where they're going to have to come to America. We welcome them with welfare and all of these benefits, and all they had to do was get across the border by one means or another, legally or illegally. And once they were here, then they could come in and begin to pay into our Social Security system, but they could begin to work for less and drive down our wage level. And the whole idea is to impoverish the American people. And when you understand that, it all begins to make sense. Wages are not going up, unless, of course, you work for the government, but most wages are not going up, and people are just glad to have any sort of a job right now. Anything else, Frank, you wanted to say before we let you go?
No, thank you very much for that explanation. It makes sense now.
Okay, God bless.
Frank, there's one more thing, and that is that inflation is about 4% in Mexico, maybe 3.5%. But their growth without stimulus is going to be 4% this year. And therein lies the big difference between the two countries. And there's other countries like that. And so, on a scale of 10, the U.S. and England and Europe being 8 to 10, Mexico, Australia, Canada, Switzerland will all be 4s and 5s.
Okay, fine. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. I sure appreciate it.
Bye-bye. Okay, fine. Well, we've got John calling from Spokane, but let me get our number out again. It's 1-888-24-LIBERTY. 1-888-24-LIBERTY or 464-8295. We've got John calling from Spokane, Washington. Hi, John. How are we doing?
Hi, Dr. Stan. Doing good.
Okay, have a question?
I got a question for Bob. Bob, what do you think if there was a sort of a grassroots campaign for people to start to boycott the global type businesses and bankers and only go toward local or national type businesses for their goods and services, whether it's food at the grocery store that's not imported from South America or someplace, and just had a sort of a slogan of think outside the big box, and kind of like what Gandhi did with the cotton and their clothes that they did in India. What do you think about if that idea even has a chance in hell?
Well, I love the idea, but I'm very skeptical. There's not enough people starving in America yet. In India, people were in terrible shape, and most of them still are, as a matter of fact. And so it's going to be a stretch to do something like that. It'll come, but unfortunately, there won't be many demonstrations. It'll probably be revolution. Because the people will hold back and hold back and hold back and finally say, no, that's the end of it. I'm going to move on this thing. I'm through living like an animal. And that's what it's going to happen.
Well, and then it would be chaos.
What's that?
And then it would be chaos, sort of an anarchy situation.
I think so.
Okay, fine.
That's why this election is so important. You've got to get those people out of there. It's so important.
And John, we're moving into a period of chaos and crisis in this country. I really believe we are coming to a period of civil unrest, and I believe the government is going to foment it. We saw this during the Vietnam War. Who financed all those demonstrations we saw during Vietnam? Why, the government financed them. You had the war on one side, the anti-war people on the other. Oh, you get people just fighting back and forth. You always want a controlled opposition. Understand we're being constantly manipulated. Anything else, John, you wanted to say before we let you go?
No, thanks, guys.
God bless. Okay, fine. Well, Chris, that was John calling from Spokane. Our guest is Bob Chapman from the International Forecaster. And if you don't subscribe to the Forecaster, you really don't know what's going on in the world today. There's nothing quite like it. Hang on, Bob. We'll be back in just a moment.
You got it. Bye-bye.
Well, this is Dr. Stan, and we do hope, of course, that you enjoy our weekly conversations with Bob Chapman. Will be our guest again this evening on our 8 o'clock program. And we're trying to get as many people as possible to prepare for the difficult times that lie ahead. And they're going to be difficult financial times, I fear that, because we have a fiat money system, money that is backed with absolutely nothing. They can manipulate this. I believe, of course, what's happened in Zimbabwe was sort of a trial for what's going to happen here. Remember, it was the American State Department that installed Mugabe over there in Rhodesia, over the objections of the Rhodesian people. But, of course, Henry Kissinger promised if things ever got bad, America would come to their aid. Well, I don't know what he means by things getting bad. Half the population's already left the country. There's 85% unemployment. There's murder, rape, and torture by the Mugabe's regime, which we're still keeping in power in the name of humanitarian aid. They've destroyed the value of the currency. The people who had Rhodesian currency are now penniless. Pensioners experiencing starvation in the country. No medicines. It was all done, I believe, sort of as a trial to see how it could work. How could you destroy a first world nation? They did the same thing in Iraq today. If they have 3 hours of electricity a day in Baghdad, they're really lucky. And in the outlying areas, no electricity. And, of course, no sewage, no intermittent water. This was a direct result of an experiment by the invisible government of our nation. They wanted to see how to destroy a nation, how the people would react. They just love to play these foolish little games.